Hey, all, welcome back to a Monday, July 8th, 2024 edition here on the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. We got a fun show for you guys here today on a Monday. We've got fellow University of North Georgia alumni Matt Green joining the show as he does at this time each and every week to do our pod divided Georgia and Tennessee college football show here. We also get into our theme, which will be the SEC coach pressure ranking tiers. So ranking them 1 through 16 and which coaches fall into which tiers and how we divvied all that up going into the 2024 college football season. So that was a lot of fun with Matt. So I think you guys will enjoy that. We also got into some dog bites with Tennessee recruiting there a little bit and got into like who actually is the University of Georgia's biggest football rival right now. Tennessee, I think it's pretty clear. It's still, even with the future unclear in terms of how often they're going to play with Florida. Florida's right there at number 2, and I think Alabama's still number 1. Drop in the comments if you disagree as a Tennessee fan of who the permanent rivals and or who the biggest rivals right now for Tennessee football is across the board. You can make the case Tennessee football and basketball is definitely Alabama for the balls based on the last 4 or so seasons here on Rocky Top. But we talk about all that on today's edition of the program, so I think you guys will like that. Don't forget, folks, you can check out this program on YouTube, and if you're watching us on YouTube right now, thanks so much. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Drop a comment and let me know what you think of the daily show here on the program. You can also subscribe and check out all the full episodes, clips, shorts, all that good stuff on our YouTube channel as we're very, very close to 2,000 subs. So we'll probably get there hopefully this week. So if you help get us there, that would be great if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're listening on the audio format, thanks so much as well. You can listen on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. We are there. Make sure if you are already a subscriber and you like this show and you haven't already done so, hit that pause button right now and leave this show a 5-star rating and a review. It helps other people find the show and it helps this show continue to grow. You can check us out on the website, chasethomaspodcast.com, for full episodes, information about the show and what we're doing here on the Chase Thomas Podcast each and every day. You can also get in touch with us on in the mailbag or any questions you have for me at chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com. So reach out to me there if you would like to get in touch with the pod and any questions you might have for Matt and myself for next week's show and all that good stuff when we're talking all things college football, Vols, and Dogs on this very show. So go do that. Make sure if you haven't already, I'm going to say it one more time, and you haven't already done so, leave this show a 5-star rating and write us a review on your preferred podcast player. Leave us a comment if you're watching on YouTube. But either way, thank you for listening and supporting this daily sports show. And without further ado, Uncle Darren, let's go.
The Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, welcome back. Chase Thomas Podcast, taping this on a Sunday night where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Down there in Tequila, Georgia, my good friend, playing University of North Georgia alumni, is here, Matt Green. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon, sir. It is good to be back with you here on a Sunday night. 7-7. That's I don't know if you believe in number stuff, but that seems like a good one, right? Double sevens.
It's not bad. Also, what did I catch a good afternoon? It's dang near midnight here, Matt Green. When do you transition to good evening?
Good evening, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, sir.
I'm like, what? Matt Green, his afternoon's still going strong. I'm like, Matt Green's pulling an all-nighter if this is still afternoon when we're
I'm talking to that one guy that just started the show at like 1:32 in the afternoon. That's the guy I'm talking to right now.
Okay. How was your 4th? How did the dogs do on the 4th of July with fireworks? Are they able, how does that work for the big dogs here with Maddox and Zeus?
They're actually they don't make it too big of a deal with the fireworks. We actually had someone down the street from us, like 2 houses down, doing some pretty solid fireworks. So I feel like 4th of July is the ultimate day to be on the water, just drinking some beers, just be on the water. Maybe it's a river, maybe it's a lake, maybe it's a pool. But didn't do that this year. Tori was feeling a little under the weather. So we ended up watching movies, little Americana movies, and I feel like it was an excellent. Maybe it was the 4th of July tradition now. Then we watched some fireworks. It was good, but we watched Independence Day, and then she had never seen that before, and then we watched Sandlot, and that was just feel good movie. Watching Sandlot. I don't know when the last time I watched Sandlot, but it's just a good feeling. But yeah, it was a good time. How about yourself, sir?
It's funny you say that because I didn't watch Sandlot, so I'm not gonna lie. It's a strong take.
Oh,
I don't like
geez.
Sandlot. Sandlot's just not for me. I don't know. I
What?
never could get into Sandlot as a kid. Didn't enjoy it. Like Little Giants, like I'm here for. Like go baby go
These,
and stuff like
these
that.
are mutually exclusive.
I'm
Both
just saying, like
great
they're
movies
not
of my
every.
childhood. The Big Green, while we're at
The
it,
Big Green's fantastic. Love the Big Green. I like Rookie of the Year.
But
I
hold
like.
on. We got to back up. But what's the issue with Sandlot?
It feels very contrived. It's just not.
Oh,
It
geez.
all just feels very. I don't know. It just maybe because I saw it later and I don't know how to best explain it. It just doesn't feel genuine to me. It just feels like a movie that isn't designed specifically so that's all of America is just like, what a great movie. This is what America is baseball, the evil dog, this one kid in the neighborhood who turns pro, baseball being this out, and I don't know. Like, you know what
But
what's
it's
great?
not an evil
Heavyweights. We
dog.
watched Heavyweights last night.
It's
Heavyweights cracked me up, man. I have not seen Heavyweights in so long. My wife and I were cracking up. Heavyweights still slaps. Heavyweights, great movie. So I'm not,
yeah.
it's not just a Sandlot thing. It wasn't for me. It never I tried it. Didn't like it. I'm not a Sandlot guy. I don't know. I never understood the hype. There's a lot better movies in that same ilk than Sandlot. Overrated, I guess is the
Oh,
strongest point I have here.
geez.
It's
First
a
of
really
all,
overrated movie.
the Beast was not a vicious dog. All right, Hercules, I believe was his
Yeah.
actual name. He was just misunderstood. The kids in the neighborhood, they didn't know. He was just a big dog. They were scared of him. But once they got to know Hercules, obviously he was a good dog. That big old mastiff. But yeah, I mean, it's
you're
just a
blinded. You
good
like dogs like that.
a mastiff. No, we were actually watching it, and Tori was like, "Oh, I could have a dog like that." I'm like, "No, this
I
thing
knew
is
that was gonna happen. That's what I'm
giant."
saying. Y'all are big
Yeah,
dog people. Yeah.
no, it's I would not want one that big, but it's a quality movie. I don't really know. I don't even know what to the old Josh Pate thing, overrated, underrated. Like, what's it rated? Like, I don't know what it's rated. It didn't win any
I just feel like
Oscars.
people who
It's just a
it's one of those movies that
quality.
you don't feel great about broadcasting to the world that you're like, yeah, I didn't like it. That's one where people are like, what? How can you not like The Sandlot? It's in that conversation where people are like, how can you not like this movie?
I think that's a legitimate question. It's like it's not like the greatest movie ever, but it's like it was good. I mean, other than the one plot line of like you knew that this was a ball that was on the trophy case. Like
Yeah.
you knew it was, and then all of a sudden when they need to get a ball to forge the signature of Babe Ruth, now they just are able to find 79 cents. Before it was like, well, where are we going to get 79 cents for another baseball? But now when they need to forge the signature, no problem. They just go down and get another baseball. You could have done that before the Babe Ruth baseball, but it is a movie. But that if you have one issue with it, that would probably be my biggest issue. But it's a quality, feel good movie.
See, that's what I'm saying. You can't do it. Like you're going back to it. You're like, it's a quality, feel good movie. Like that's the whole thing.
It's
You
a
can't
kids
push back
movie.
against that because people like are like, how can you not? Like it's one of those movies that's just universally understood that like everyone likes The Sandlot, and I was just like, it's fine. It didn't really
Yeah,
move the needle for me.
contrarian over here.
I know and I don't feel great about that one. Like there's gonna be people who comment below here. They're like, how do you not like The Sandlot? Like,
You
and
tell
I'm
me
just
Forrest Gump's overrated too?
no. Forrest Gump's a fantastic movie.
Yeah. Okay.
No, you're not gonna. No, Forrest Gump's great.
Yeah, also, Independence Day holds up. Independence Day quality
Can I
movie.
tell you, I've never seen Independence Day.
Oh man, it's a quality movie. That's back when Will Smith is on top of the world.
I mean, he's still doing big time
Just
movies, but yeah, definitely.
just number one
Isn't he
action
just now
star.
in Bad Boys? And the newest Bad Boys just come out?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. it's all these
It's a little
remakes.
bit
Does anyone
different.
get excited about all these remakes that come out these days? Like, sure. I'm sure it'll make a bunch of money. Cool.
I think I'm excited for, what is it? Long Legs is, I think, the scary movie that's coming out next week. My wife and I are excited about that one. We saw Quiet Place day 1 last week. That was good. I don't know. There's some good stuff, but we did watch Heavyweights last night, and that was fantastic. I have not seen Heavyweights in a really long time. In that movie, Ben Stiller still put on a clinic in that one. Like, he's just, Tony Perkis is an all-time classic character, and Ben Stiller just, for an hour and 40 minutes, is just unbelievable in that role, which naturally Matt Green brings us here to our college football show. But before we get into our theme of the night, which is the most pressure for the different college football SEC coaches that is going into the 2024 season, we broke it up in tiers. And then we had our own list, 1 through 16, of who is on the under the most pressure heading into to this upcoming football season, which we're, I think, 55 days away here for Tennessee. So I'm not sure. I guess, do y'all open on a Saturday, or are y'all opening on a Thursday? Yeah. Okay, so then 55 days for the Dogs as well. But before we get into what's going on with our theme here, Matt Green, dog bites. A couple of new things this week. The biggest one, I think, for Georgia was a big flip from a South Carolina commit corner, Mr. Earls, who was committed to the Gamecocks, and 4-star kid who flipped this week. What can you say about this kind of flip for South Carolina? And then also Jaden Perlotti, who is a 4-star linebacker from Buford, who's been committed to the Dogs for a while, got some crystal balls to the Vols this week. So what do you think about those two things here, Matt Green?
Yeah, when it comes to Perlotti, it's like, man, that linebacker room at Georgia is just so loaded. Like, you can understand anyone that's like, yeah, I want to be a part of it. I want to be the best. Georgia's putting out linebackers every year. And you could also be like, yeah, it might be like 2 or 3 years till I play there. I might go somewhere else. But yeah, still committed to Georgia to this point. But that could be big if he flips. I know there's some Florida State talk like a few months back with him flipping, and that never actually happened. So we'll see. But yeah, the flip that did happen, Shamari Earls flipping from South Carolina to Georgia, top 100 player in the country on most sites, I think. 4-star corner, and this is the exact type. Like, Kirby Smart definitely has a type when it comes to DBs. 6'2", like 200, just like these big corners, and he's one that they talk about like potentially could play safety as well. So yeah, I mean, that's we'll get into South Carolina a little bit, but that's just the I don't know what it is to be South Carolina these days. Like, they're doing, Shane Beamer's doing things well, and then just like this, one of your biggest commits goes and flips to one of your biggest rivals.
It's a big one, and I mean, it's been a tough offseason. I mean, Juice Wells and company departing outside. I was actually spending part of this evening going through all the different transfers and looking at people transfer in and transfer out, and it's crazy. Like, you see the Clemson 12 out, 0 in for this transfer cycle. Georgia actually had a sneaky high. I think they were in the mid 20s and maybe 24 transfers out, and then I think they had 10 in this cycle. But just thinking about all the, like you said, with just the numbers, and then when you're looking at the upcoming class, like, it's going to be a tight race here down the stretch. I mean, David Sanders announces next month, August 17th. I think there's going to be a lot of big time commitments over the next couple of weeks that Tennessee and Georgia are in on. Christian Gass, another 4-star linebacker that Tennessee and Georgia are both chasing heavily. It's interesting because I feel like the way it seems on the outside here is that Georgia will get one, Tennessee will get one of these two linebackers between Perlotti and Gass. It'd be a humongous win if Tennessee was able to close with both. But there's also been some Tennessee fans who got like kind of, because Georgia fans are like, well, if Perlotti ends up at Tennessee, then it's like, well, then Georgia didn't really want Perlotti. They were okay with moving on from him. And it's like, also Tennessee fans, I'm just going to go ahead and say, if Georgia offered and had a spot for this player at the linebacker spot, don't overthink this. Don't be like, well, I don't want this guy. Like, if Georgia didn't want him, then clear, they weren't like dying to keep him in the class. Then it's like, y'all, don't overthink this. Like, he got the offer. Kirby is not wasting these offers. He's not wasting these spots. And it's like, if he stays and because he hasn't done it yet. Like if he ends up flipping, that's a big get for Tennessee. Like it's big to get someone that Georgia wanted, regardless of how much you think from the outside they did or did not want to keep him in this class. They had a spot for Jaden Perlotti. If he stays with his commitment and everything else, that is a spot for him on an extremely talented and loaded Georgia defense that you're bringing in. So it's just one of those things where I'm like, don't overthink this. Like even if it's just one of Christian Gass or Jaden Perlotti, embrace it. It's a big win for Tennessee. And as you're still building up, you're in year 4. You need to keep stacking these classes, and Tennessee doesn't have a linebacker in this class right now. So because they had a linebacker coach change in the middle of the cycle. So you need a guy. And I think if you end up with Perlotti or Christian Gass, then if you're a Tennessee fan, I think you need to be pretty pleased because both those guys are guys that Kirby Smart and the Dogs would love to have in their class.
For sure. Like Georgia's still probably signed, I don't know, 5 or 6 inside linebackers ranked higher than that in the last 2 or 3 years, but they were offering him a scholarship, so they obviously wanted him. So yeah, I think it would you're going to try to downplay anything one of your rivals does. So yeah, that's
because
the
both sides are acting crazy from what I've seen on message boards where it's like the Georgia fans are like, oh, Tennessee fans are so like, we didn't really want him anyway, or it's not a big deal if we go that. And then you have Tennessee fans where it's like, oh, Georgia fans are already getting on to us, making fun of us for being excited about Jaden. Like, y'all go touch some grass. Go touch some grass this weekend because it's a good situation. And again, this is what we talked about on last week's show where it's like, these are the battles that Tennessee fans should be excited about being in. It's great to see if you're a Vol fan right now that some big time blue chippers are down to Georgia and Tennessee at multiple stops. Like that's huge. Like Travis Smith, Jaden Perlotti, Christian Gass, Isaiah Gibson. Like you're not going to win them all, but like that's a humongous improvement over where you were 4 years ago. That's the kind of battles you want to be in. You want to be in the big boy battles because like you just never know how this is going to go. Like DeCorian Moore, the 5-star kid from Texas, number 1 receiver in this class, he kind of shocked everybody and picked Oregon over the weekend. So that one, like he's from Texas, and Texas has been on a run of signing 5-star receivers, this, that, and the other. He ends up out of state in Oregon. Like you just don't know. You just want to be in the mix because you, at the end of the day, in the current recruiting climate, you don't know ultimately where these guys are going to really end up. And even if you feel like, oh, well, I don't want to be in a final battle or with Georgia's or the Alabamas, Texas's, whatever. It's like, no, you need to be in those final 3, final 4, final 2, whatever, because you're going to get some of them. They're going to surprise and go your way sometimes in these battles. So I don't know. I think by and large, it's just a good thing. Don't overthink it, Vol fans and Georgia fans. Like hey, act like you've been there before. Act like you've been there before.
There was a day where the message boards like were exclusive to the fans of that team, you know, and it was like that was the trust tree, you know, with the branches, you know, we could say things here on our message board, and then at some point it just became a thing of like going to other message boards and trolling their fan base or getting an account on a different message board and pretending to be a Florida fan and saying like it just then the message boards just became like Twitter, and it just became, you know, just awful and no real reliable information happening there. But if it ever was reliable, even Rusty Mansell these days, I feel like he's so dialed in that it's like he's just like, oh, something's about to happen, but it's like I guess he doesn't want to ruin anyone's moment. So he like doesn't say that who's
going to. Pete Thamel ruined DeCorian Moore's moment.
You guys check in back on Tuesday, like stuff like that. So, what were we saying?
Well, did you see Pete Thamel had that scheduled tweet go out about DeCorian Moore committing to the Ducks like 2 hours before his commitment went live on Instagram, and then he deleted it, and then he quote tweeted the announcement from DeCorian like right after, and then people were dunking on him like, dude, you can't also congratulate him later when you spoiled his moment and be like he picks it, like, oh, it was, and then he ended up deleting them both, I think. But yeah, it's just not a good look. It's not what you want to do.
Imagine what Pete Thamel's Twitter activity looks like, so I got to give him some leeway.
So there you go. The other dog bite here that I'm going to throw your way, Matt Green. I'm curious because I saw so I'm like just listening to different podcasts over the week and reading different articles and stuff like that. One of the things that I've thought about, and Tennessee fans have been talking about, and really just SEC fans as a whole, because Texas and Oklahoma coming in here, and with the permanent rival stuff and the questions about how many permanent rivals each school in the conference is going to have year over year in the coming years, who the actual real rivals are, like who are the real rivals for their school. And I think for Tennessee, it's still Alabama. I still think they're number one no matter what, for the foreseeable future. It's not Vanderbilt. It's not Kentucky. It's not South Carolina. I think it's not Georgia. I think Florida is probably number two still. If I had to really nail it down, I would say the most passionate animosity, because I think that's a part of it with the rivalry, is like there has to be some real animosity on both sides. And I think Tennessee versus Florida and Tennessee versus Alabama has that real long-term animosity that I just don't think any of their other conference brethren can match in those atmospheres. But I think on the Georgia side, I'm not really sure. So I wanted to ask you, Matt Green, heading into 2024, who is Georgia's real rival? Because like on first, like I my first thing was Florida, but I was also like, I don't know if is it Alabama now? Is it South? It's been South Carolina in a weird way sometimes. Like they've been kind of attached to Georgia in the permanent rival stuff. Like who is Georgia's main rival now in the
Well,
SEC,
Georgia is
Matt Green?
South Carolina's biggest rival in the SEC,
Yeah.
but South Carolina is not Georgia. South Carolina's like 7th on Georgia's list, but it feels like everyone's a rival with Georgia. But because Tennessee, like that's not one of the official rivalries, but Georgia Tennessee, you can tell me it's not a rivalry. Like it's Georgia Tennessee is massive, right? Like two border states right there. But I
I'm
think
not saying it's not a rivalry. I'm just saying in terms, like, you have to do a pecking order. And if we're doing the pecking order for
sure.
fans, I just don't think it's above Florida and Alabama. I just don't.
Yeah, I mean, the last decade, Georgia's clearly biggest like competition has been Alabama, right? Like that's been the gold standard of what Georgia's been trying to do for the last decade is what Alabama's doing. But with how much history there is, like we were talking about, we and you were having that conversation the other day about Georgia not being able to win in Bryant-Denny Stadium. I think somebody said in one of our comments. And it's like, wait, Georgia never even actually really went to Bryant-Denny Stadium. Like, I think Saban only beat Georgia one time at Bryant-Denny Stadium. He was there for 16 years or something. But Georgia beat him year one with Matthew Stafford, and then played him one other time the entire time Nick Saban was there. And then hosted him, I want to say twice, the blackout, and then that rain game where they got blown out as well. So the fact that they played 4 regular season games, and we're talking the last almost 20 years, because they've been so good, they've played in how many? 3 SEC championships, 2 national championships. So they've been playing at the highest level. So those have been like the most important games. But there's just something about like the timeless feeling of animosity with Florida. Like Georgia, Florida is second to none in my book. Like the whole cocktail party and just having all the fans down there, even if though it's like not even really like it's weird because obviously you're drinking with other fans of opposing teams. Like there's fans are constantly just co-mingling. But then once you get in that stadium, I don't know. There's something about Georgia, Florida that's just the next level. Obviously, Auburn and Georgia, Deep South's oldest rivalry. That one goes way back. That one, I feel like that you'd have to say that's Georgia's second rival. But yeah, I mean, Florida and Auburn are on another level. Like if they're doing anything to Georgia's schedule, like I think most Georgia fans like the idea of not playing Tennessee every year is just. It's like it's a deal breaker, like Georgia and Tennessee should be happening every year, but obviously
but it won't be.
Something's going to have to change. Yeah. Everyone has these games they want to play every year. And like South Carolina, Georgia isn't happening this year. Right. So like that's a weird one to see. So I think Georgia, if they only get 2 locked, and we don't really even know what they're going to do the future schedules yet, but I think without a doubt, Florida and Auburn are at the top of that list.
It's interesting you say Auburn, because I do you think that's how Georgia fans feel across the board about Auburn still, or do you think that's waned with Auburn's kind of just incompetent administration
I think
to
if you're
kind of.
talking to students right now, Tennessee might be number one, just
Hmm.
because of what that game was in Sanford Stadium in 2022. Wait, yeah, in 2022. So, and then the last year with kind of how like the energy that there was in Neyland Stadium and running the very first play for a touchdown, and then Georgia kind of responding the way they did. Like that's like Alabama type stuff. You start taking the best swings of other teams, and then you get right back up and you take care of business. Like that's the thing that Georgia didn't do in the past. So right now, Tennessee, just because of how good they are compared to Florida and Auburn, I think Tennessee probably feels like a bigger rival.
Hmm.
But that I think Tennessee might replace Auburn kind of in recent history. But I mean, that was not a good Auburn team a year ago, and they took Georgia to the wire, like because there's just something different about that rivalry, especially games played in Jordan-Hare Stadium. But obviously, Georgia won several blowouts recently with Auburn, but there's still been those close games. So I don't know. I think just the history that's involved that they've played. I mean, that's the longest running series in the entire SEC. So I mean, just for that reason, like you can't stop playing Georgia Auburn.
Okay. I like it. Well, Matt Green, kind of lay out because this is your brainchild here, tonight's theme. I've had the last few weeks, and now we're pivoting back to what Matt Green's got cooking here. So, explain the tiers and what we're getting into here with the SEC head coach pressure, kind of pressure conversation we're about to jump into.
Yes, sir. So I I don't know who the list was. We can give him credit. These lists are going all around, but I shouldn't give him credit because it was a terrible list. I sent it to you and I was like, we got to do our own segment on
Mm.
this. This is an awful list. Starting off the bat, they
Well, I
had
mean, I saw this week, and Brady Cook was listed as the number one quarterback in the SEC. I think on that SEC podcast, where I'm like, "What are we doing? What are we doing?"
Man, I saw some comments saying Carson Beck was just Jake Fromm 2.0 or something. I was like, got to get off this app. But first of all, this list had Brent Venables at 14, which that off the bat was like, wait, a 10-win season is just Oklahoma fans are like, oh yeah, we're good. This guy is the real deal. I think Venables is under much more pressure than that, but obviously we'll get to the list. But that's what got me thinking. So I'm just gonna read. I'm gonna go. This is my list, 1 through 16, and we're just gonna go tier by tier how I came up with this list because not everyone's under the same pressure, right? Some guys are
Mm.
like, you can get fired. Some guys are, we need to win a national championship. So it's a little bit different. So starting off my very first tier, this is the hot seat tier. I got
Hmm.
number 1, Billy Napier, and number 2, Sam Pittman. What are your thoughts on that tier? Where do you have those guys?
Well, it's interesting you put them together because I think, in the way I did mine in my top three, is like I think this tier there's three that should be grouped together, and you have two that are grouped together: Billy Napier and Sam Pittman. I think Shane Beamer has to be in that same conversation with
Okay.
the personnel department person who just left this past week, and that was under strange circumstances, it seems like, from the outside. That's never good. You obviously are losing Spencer Rattler, Juice Wells and company, like a lot of question marks I still have about where South Carolina's headed. And we talked about it in the show last week where everybody is all eyes on Billy Napier in that schedule, but I look at South Carolina and I see a worse season for South Carolina than I do Florida. And as of right now, if you ask me to pick who wins more games in 2024, I pick Florida over South Carolina. And I just
So
don't know what, we talked about it when we went through South Carolina's history. When coaches win 4 or 5 games in South Carolina, that's usually it. Like Will Muschamp, Steve Spurrier, you go back, when you hit that 3-win, 4-win, 5-win area, it can get very, very hot. So I just think Beamer has to be in that conversation because I could see all of Beamer, Napier, and Pittman gone after this year at their respective schools. So I grouped them together.
I
I was
think
surprised. Why don't you have Beamer with those two?
I think the difference, and I'll get to Beamer when we get to that tier, but I think the difference is like I think Napier and Pittman are much hotter seats. Like
Hmm.
there's definitely I would say probably, would you say bowl game or fired for both of these guys?
No.
Okay, so what's the threshold? Like, where do they have to get to? Like, is there a win total that Pittman or Napier have to get to keep their job?
I think Pittman, I don't know, because like one of the weird things about Pittman is that Petrino's now in the building, and Petrino's obviously coached at Arkansas. He has been a successful head coach. Like it's one of those things where if he does really well, does that make Arkansas administration more comfortable moving on from Pittman because Petrino can just be the head coach and keep this thing humming and jump back into the saddle as the head guy, or is it more of like, hey, no, this is good, it worked out, but we're still going to keep the CEO type coach and Sam Pittman, the likable guy, and we'll keep
He
this
could
thing
be the
humming as a
fundraiser, the face of the
yeah.
program.
Like I don't know how that goes, so I'm not really sure for Sam Pittman if it helps him or not for Bobby Petrino to be a home run OC hire, because I don't know if that helps him or not. I know that's a weird way of phrasing it, but I don't know.
What if they go 4-8, 5-7, but the offense is
I think
fun?
4-8 or below, Pittman's out.
If they go 5-7 and the offense is fun and they're
then I think
losing
they
some
still
close
move off from
games,
Pittman and they just promote Petrino, would be my guess. If the offense is fun and good and Pittman
but
doesn't
Pittman
get a bowl
hired
game,
him. That's on Pittman to get
I
a guy
know.
like Petrino.
But he also needed him to save his job. I know. That's what I'm saying. It's a really weird situation with Petrino back at Arkansas.
I think Pittman is, because he feels like so kind of beloved at Arkansas, it feels like he doesn't have a bowl game or bust. That's like the small distinction I put at number 2. I feel like Billy Napier, like 3 straight seasons of not of losing records. Like I have obviously 6 and 7 could make a bowl game and still be a losing record, but I think if they miss a bowl game, I just can't see the University of Florida keeping a head coach for 3 losing seasons. Like fair or unfair, because I mean, I think the SEC, the competition, we know about Florida's schedule, like we know about the roster that he inherited. So like maybe I don't think he maybe should be fired. I'll find it hard to believe that the University of Florida will have the patience not to fire him if it's a 3rd straight losing season.
I don't know, because like part of me is like everybody knows about the Florida schedule. Everybody. Like the administration at Florida knows what Napier is up against schedule wise. I wonder how much that shapes their perspective on their own expectations going into this year, where they look at this schedule and they're like, I mean, either he's your guy or he's not your guy, if you're Scott Strickland. But I look at it and I'm like, what is the most realistic outcome here for Billy Napier? And if they look before the year, the administration looks at it and they're like, look, I think they should be able to get to 5 or 6 wins, and then we just hope and pray we get a better schedule next year. And TJ Lagway will be a sophomore. He's a super talented 5-star. Maybe we get him in the build and he kind of changes some stuff. Let's just get through this terrible stretch of games here this fall and get into year 4 with Napier. I could see them talking themselves into that because Lagway is such a big time prospect that I don't know. Florida's still recruiting well. Like part of the, like, it's not like Florida's fallen off on the recruiting aspect of things when it comes to, what Florida's doing on the talent front. Like they're in the blue chip ratio. So it's not like they're falling off a cliff and things are going awry in different ways. But like, I don't know. I think if you were asking me who's the least safe of anyone in this conference right now, I would probably go 1, Sam Pittman, 2, Beamer, 3, Napier, because I think Napier has the narrative on his side where I genuinely think everyone around the country will be like, what did you want him to do with the schedule? Like if he goes 4-8 or 5-7, they're like, what did you want to happen? Because do you get what I'm saying? Where if he can stand to only overachieve almost, because if Napier wins 7 games or something, he's looked at as like a, wow, he's got Florida moving.
It's like, but there's a difference between this conversation in the off season and this conversation when the season's actually happening. And you actually go through those like 5 straight losses. It's about feelings. And it's like, this is my prediction of how Florida's season's going to go. You are going to hear so many people, whether it's commentators, Florida fans, say the phrase, I know there's no moral victories, but, and then whatever they have to say, because there could be multiple. It's going to be about feelings. Like maybe Florida's at 24-21 going into the fourth quarter, and then Georgia wins by 17 or something, or kind of pulling away, or maybe LSU wins at a last second field goal or something like that. Like it's going to be like if you kind of feel like you had enough moments to cheer for, like the season was fun. We weren't just getting embarrassed every week. There is a chance, because you're right. The recruiting is going in the right level, or at the right, in the right direction. But I don't know.
You also don't want to lose DJ Lagway, right? Like you run the risk of losing DJ if you make the change.
For sure. I'm just curious if they'll actually do it. If like seeing 3 straight losing seasons, it's tough. It's tough to keep your job.
But you get the other side of it where it's like, well, they're predicted. Like if they're not, Florida might not be favored in like 9 games this year. And then you're like, well, he did exactly what he was supposed to do with this team.
Yeah, but he's the one that built the roster that's not favored in 9 games, So it's at some point it's year 3. So we'll
I don't
see.
know. I'm also just optimistic. I think there's a strong chance Florida comes into Knoxville undefeated in mid-October.
No, it definitely could happen. But let's take it to tier 2. The tier 2 is we need a national title. And on this tier, we got number 3 on my rankings, Brian Kelly, and number 4, Steve Sarkisian. So Sarkisian obviously has a lot of goodwill built up. Beat Alabama, had that great season last year, made the college football playoff. But Texas fans, they got short memories. They won a national title. It's been about 2 decades since they had a national title. And that's the ultimate goal at Texas. So I think he's on the right path, but Texas, I mean, especially with how they're being talked about this year, this is year 1 in the SEC, and it's pretty much Georgia and Texas kind of at the top in most people's eyes. So, I mean, this team underachieves, wins 8-9 games. Who knows what the people in Texas are going to be saying at the end of the year. So, but I like Sarkisian. I think this Texas team's going to be good this year, but there still is a lot of pressure. It's tough to take a team like up into that top 10, top 5 range, but it's even harder to get them all the way to the top in the national to get a national championship. And that's all Texas fans want. And then with Brian Kelly, I will say Brian Kelly is not unfireable in 2024. Like with how awful this defense was a year ago, like that was one of the only things that I'm like, Brian Kelly is going to bring a floor, just going to raise the floor, like just to another level that Ed Orgeron was like having these boom or bust type seasons. Like Brian Kelly was the ultimate model of consistency at Notre Dame year in and year out. And now he can get LSU level talent. This team's winning national titles. Like now we've seen 2 years, like obviously year 1, they went to the SEC championship, even though it ended up being like a 4-loss team. That team was good. And maybe they kind of raised the expectations a little quick, but man, they had a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback last year with one of the worst defenses in the entire country. Like obviously I don't think they rank that low, but one of the worst in Power 5. And like that's just inexcusable to me. So with what LSU's actual, like, I don't think he's going to be fired, but I think there's a world where you see no improvement and maybe they lose 3-4 games. LSU's like, this isn't what we signed up for. So I don't know. I'm not predicting he gets fired, but I'm saying he's not unfireable with just kind of how they just uncharacteristically underachieved a year ago.
It's funny, like he had a Heisman quarterback this past year. The offenses have been elite. He's still recruiting at a high level. They're in the blue chip ratio. There was a thing this offseason that kind of dominated for a while about like the NIL and the defensive line thing, because one of the defensive linemen ended up at the TCU kid ended up at Oklahoma that they were in on or whatever. And that was like something that got headlines like 2 months ago in terms of like, is Brian Kelly doing enough in the talent acquisition department? But you talk about the defense. He stole one of the best defensive coordinators away from another SEC foe, and Baker from Mizzou, who had created a pretty nasty unit up there in Columbia for the last couple of seasons. So I think that's a check for Brian Kelly where he's adapting, where he's like, okay, we messed up here. And it's never good when like your best defensive player, like the broadcast and everyone's talking about every week is like how you're not using your best player on defense correctly week over week. It's never good, especially at a place like LSU. So
there's
I
games
think
where Harold Perkins was invisible last year.
yeah, and that's just not where you want to be. He's just too good. But I think Baker is going to be an upgrade. So I think the LSU defense is going to be really good. I agree with you that they're in this national title or bust thing where LSU is a different kind of job because they have different expectations. And I think, you know, what's funny too, when we group LSU and Texas together, LSU has a right to have ridiculous expectations. Texas doesn't, because LSU's won what, 3 titles in the last 22 years, Matt Green? What is it? Let's see here. They've won in 2003, 2007, and then 2019. Yeah, 3 in this century. Texas has won since
Their last 3
1969.
head coaches too.
Yeah, but that's the thing is like they have a right to just like swap guys out. There's enough talent in the state of Louisiana. They have the NIL. They have the history. They can go out and find their guys. They'll stumble their way into the next Nick Saban, whoever, Les Miles, this, that, and the other. Like they'll find the next guy. They'll find somebody else to come in here and win it at Baton Rouge. They don't need Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly needs LSU to win a national title. That was the reason he left Notre Dame, right? It's because he thought that there was a ceiling in what you could win at Notre Dame. LSU's like, our ceiling's not going anywhere. Like we don't need Brian Kelly. Like we hired Brian Kelly to bring some stability here, and he's been good, but he hasn't been great. Like we haven't seen like the great beating Alabama in year 1 was a big win for him. Obviously having Jane Daniels win the Heisman last year. You lose your OC back to Notre Dame. We'll see what that means for this offense. They promoted from within the co-coordinator thing. Everyone seems to really like Garrett Nussmeier. A lot of guys, though, in the NFL draft from this past group. We'll see. But I think you're right in terms of like, I don't know how many 8-4 or even 9-3, 10-2 years are LSU fans going to be okay with, where they're like, yeah, we're winning a lot of games. We have a fun offense, this, that, and the other, but like, we're not really in it. It doesn't feel like we're close to Georgia. It doesn't feel like we're close to winning a national title. It just feels like we're a really good, consistently really good team that's not trending towards being that complete LSU juggernaut that can actually run the gauntlet and win a national title. But on the Texas front, like I said, you've won 1 title since 1969. You know who should have that is Oklahoma. Oklahoma should have the Texas feel, where Oklahoma dominated the Big 12. Oklahoma has the prestige. Oklahoma has the title in 2000. They've been to the college football playoff multiple times. They've run the Big 12. They have been the more consistent. That you have the legendary coaches coming out of there. You have the Heisman winners. Oklahoma's been way more of the consistent program over the years than Texas. Texas obviously has the flash, but I'm like, if you have boom or bust, title or bust aspirations, and you're a Texas fan or you're in the Texas administration, like I understand you were just in the CFP this past year, you're recruiting at a national title level, but y'all need to pump your brakes. Like I just feel like y'all need to be okay with being really good for a while. Be okay with being where LSU is with Brian Kelly, right? Because you don't have this history. This is the first time y'all been stable for this kind of like duration in a long time. Like enjoy this. Like, hey, don't be like, hey, we have to rock the boat or move on from Sark if we get bounced in the first round of the CFP. Like, no, you've got Arch coming in next year. You're recruiting at an all-time great level. Like, calm it down. Like, y'all are Texas. You've never been this consistently on the right track. Just hang out. Hang out with the 9-3, 10-2 for like 3 to 4 years and see what happens in the playoff. Like, if you have a boomer bust national title busting in Texas, you haven't been paying attention to the sport for a really long time. And if you're a Texas fan with those aspirations, I just feel like you're setting yourself up to be extremely disappointed.
Well, and in fairness, I think if they lose in the first round of the playoff, like I don't think there's going to be calls to fire Steve Sarkisian, but I think it will be like I've always compared Texas to like England in European soccer because like they invented the damn game, right? Like Texas football wasn't invented in Texas, but it might as well have been invented in Texas. Like they love to flex their muscles about Texas football. But you're right. They don't have like the championship trophy cases, some of those other blue bloods, like they kind of think they do. But I think this could be, like we've kind of talked about in the past, like the best part of this 12-team format is that, the teams that make the playoff, you feel good about your team because they made the playoff, and maybe they lost in the second round, maybe they lost in the first round, but you made the playoff. Like, that's something like Brian Kelly, like, he could be a beneficiary of that, of like, yeah, if LSU finishes ranked 10th next year and they're in a playoff, that feels way different than finishing 10th. Maybe they don't even make the SEC championship in a 4-team format. But yeah, that's why I think there's definitely more pressure on Brian Kelly to prove that it's on the right track. Sarkisian's shown he's on the right track, but they're going to want that national title.
Who do you think is more likely to be at their school in the next 3 years, Sark or Kelly?
I'm going to say Sark.
I think so too.
Because I think Texas, man, they might have just hit the jackpot with this NIL and like SEC money now coming in like all at the right time. Like, in they're having a good season coming out of the Big 12. Like, they might have struck gold coming to the SEC.
I agree. And you know what's funny is that's not even because I think that Brian Kelly's not going to win it big at LSU. I think Brian Kelly could win big at LSU and then like immediately retire, where he's like, all right, did it, done. All right, we're good. I just needed to prove to myself that I could win a title with the big dogs with elite talent. Like, I could 100% see that, right? Like, it's hard for me to see Brian Kelly at Baton Rouge for like 7 years. Like, I think that's very unlikely to me.
Yeah, I think for him to be there for another 3 years, there's got to be like a Final Four, or something like some sort of like national title contention for sure at LSU. Yeah. That brings us to our next tier. The next tier is the national title contenders. This is the new target for these coaches and for these programs. Oh, where did you have Kelly and Sarkisian on your list, by the way?
4 or 5, actually.
Okay. So the next tier, the national title contenders, I got number 5, Josh Heupel, number 6, Hugh Freeze, number 7, Brent Venables. So
hold on, what is this one called? What is this tier called?
The national title contenders. So these are all the programs that are expecting this guy to contend for national titles. And so,
is Auburn there with Hugh Freeze now? Or are they already jumping into year 2 and Hugh Freeze better be
this is Auburn, man. Hell yeah. Okay. They're the wildest fan base there is. This is year 2, so this is where you're supposed to get that bump. Hugh Freeze is obviously he's had his success in the SEC, but Auburn is one of the biggest jobs in the SEC. They have those high expectations. They just fired the other guy after like 2 years, ran him out. Like, I think there's a lot of pressure for Hugh Freeze to show, and maybe not actually contend for a national title year 2, but to show that they can be that type of program again. Because the difference with these other two, it's really just timing. Like, Brent Venables just had the good year 2 where, yeah, they went 10-3, like New Year's 6 game and all that. But I mean, it's still Oklahoma, and you want to be better than that. Josh Heupel, the only difference is he had the good year 2 and then just kind of went down in year 3. And Tennessee fans, they want to contend for national titles. These programs want to be in the college football playoff, and I think that's where I have this tier.
Yeah, I think Hugh Freeze is way down on my list. I have him at 13. I have Heupel at 11. I have Venables in his own at 8. Of those 3, I would say Venables is under the most pressure because, like, Heupel, I think, to this point, is overachieved in Knoxville. I think the continuity all across the board, and Vitello just winning a natty, and Heupel and Barnes being in attendance, and just, it seems like the vibes are very good on Rocky Top among the Barnes.
Baseball. How did we get the baseball team into this conversation?
I'm just saying that they were together. Like, they were all Barnes and Heupel watched the national championship game together with Peyton Manning up there. Like, I think the vibes are pretty good with the big dogs at Tennessee is what I'm saying. So I don't, like, obviously you still have to win, and vibes can change in a hurry if Tennessee flops and has like a 6-6, 7-5 disastrous type season, or if Nico struggles and he doesn't look like a future Heisman guy. Like, yeah, sure, that changes the feelings in Knoxville, but I just don't think that's going to happen. I think Heupel has just shown the floor is so high with what he's built at Tennessee that I don't know. I mean, the pressure is there to compete. And I think if you poll the fan base right now in terms of what their expectations are for this year, I think they look at this year and next year as like they expect to make the playoff once in the next 2 years. Like, they understand because the SEC is loaded. Like, part of what fans are seeing with Texas and Oklahoma coming into the 16-team conference is there is a scenario, I don't know if it happens, of a 10-2 SEC team still getting left out, depending on how things fall. So I think with fans, they just see how loaded it is, and they're just like, yeah, we need to, like, Tennessee, I think probably Auburn and Oklahoma are in this mix, but maybe not Oklahoma less because they've been in so much recently. But that's why I think they're a loser coming into the SEC. It's like, you've had this clear path to the playoff in the Big 12 for years. Now I don't know if you're definitely not a year to year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're not making the CFP every year in the SEC. That's not happening.
No, and see, I think you said basically why Josh Heupel is what is this, 5 on my list. In the next 2 years, you expect Tennessee to make a 12-team playoff. And so if they don't, I think there's some serious talk about Josh Heupel at that point. Even if he is going, maybe if he's going 9-3 and they're ranked 13th and they're ranking 14th and they're barely missing the playoff, you're still feeling like he's having good teams. But I think there is, maybe it's like I always said this with Georgia's first national championship. It was like the Braves World Series kind of took the edge off a little bit. We were like, okay, guys, we are allowed to win championships here. Like, we've seen it done now. We're not cursed. So maybe Tennessee baseball took the edge off, and now the rest of the programs cannot have that same pressure to win a title. But
I will say, like, if Nico doesn't look great and Nico struggles there will be tension in Knoxville and worry if Nico does not look like a superstar over the course of the next years.
I mean, I would have to say 2023 team underachieved, right? Just because of Joe Milton individually, like with Joe Milton, what this offense,
they didn't underachieve. They went 9-4. Like, this was still a team that in a down year where everyone looked into this past year was like 9-3, 8-4 was the expectation, and they hit 8-4 and then won the bowl game. Like, I don't know. I don't think they really underachieved. And if you look at the games that they won that they were favored in, the ones they lost, like, it was pretty chalk all across the season. Like, they did what they were supposed to. They don't really get upset.
Florida,
I don't know.
Florida, Alabama, Georgia, and who's the fourth loss?
Florida was the only one where they were favored and that they lost.
Now, who was the fourth loss? It was Florida. Oh, Missouri. The Missouri one. I think
they were not favored in that one.
I think the Missouri is the one that kind of changed the tone of the season. That it was like they were still in contention for the East in November. Yeah. And then the Missouri one was like, oh, where did this come from? They just ran.
But that wasn't a bad loss, it turned out. Like, Mizzou was a 10+ win team.
I mean, it was a bad loss to get. What was the score? Like 38-7 or something like that?
But it was on the road, and Mizzou's a good team. Like, Mizzou played Georgia really tough till the end. Like, Mizzou was a really good team.
But it's still getting blown out is an embarrassing loss.
I just don't think that one really bothered me as much. I think the only one that actually stung was the Florida game, because Florida was not good last year, and Tennessee they gave that one away in Gainesville. That one hurt. I think that's the only one last year that I would pinpoint and say they should have had that one. The other three are totally fine.
I don't know. If I was a Tennessee fan, I would be in that. Why do we not see meaningful snaps from Nico in 2023? I would be in that camp.
It's fine. You got through the year. You weren't winning anything last year anyway. You weren't going to be you weren't going to make the 4-team CFP, and it doesn't look at the true freshman who played last year. Dante Moore struggled out at UCLA as a true freshman. Which true freshman thrived in starting roles in Power 5 programs?
But it's not about that. I mean, it's about. Tennessee was getting, pretty average to bad quarterback play at times.
But that speaks to Heupel's floor. Like, the floor is so high with what he has built at Tennessee. Like, you've lost one home game in several years now.
Like, the reason that team was not better last year, because the defense was pretty good. The defense was probably better than you could even expect them to be. Like, especially with the kind of, you expect Tennessee's offense to be a certain level every single year. That's a championship winning defense they had a year ago.
The defensive line is going to be better. I think the defense as a whole will be better this year. Like, a healthy Keenan Peele. I think the corners are going to be really good. Like, I think the defense is going to be really solid, and I think the offense is going to be better. Like, I just am not worried. Like, I guess I'm going into this year. The pressure is just not there, because I look at Oklahoma where I wonder if the reality check, because those fans and that administration, like, they're getting jokes off about Lincoln Riley avoiding the SEC, I saw this past week, and I'm like, the jokes are coming now. You just paid Brent Venables. You gave him this big extension before he even played an SEC game here. We're about to see what it looks like for Oklahoma. Like, it's not a talent thing. I'm just very curious because Oklahoma and those fans have become accustomed to being a premier program that has won a crap load of football games and been a really competent football program for our entire life, Matt Green. What happens if they're like a 7-5? What happens if they get Arkansas
have
when
one
they
season
SEC?
playing like 3 ranked teams, like ever?
But what I'm saying is, like, what if they have the same fate that Arkansas had when they joined the big boys in the SEC? Where it's like Arkansas, if they're in the Big 12 every year, Arkansas has looked at completely different. Like, I think Arkansas could have dominated the Big 12 over the last 20 years if they're playing in that league instead of the SEC.
The one thing is the SEC, like, it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. It joining the SEC legitimizes your program. So A&M became a better program when they came to the SEC. So it's like, if you could put this SEC A&M back in the Big 12, they'd be running it. But getting to the SEC and getting that SEC money and everything that comes with it is kind of what builds the program. So I don't know. It's hard for me to. I'm not saying that can't happen, but man, Oklahoma, we've seen a lot of elite history of Oklahoma football. I'm not gonna write them off yet.
I'm not either. I'm very, very fascinated what the temperature of that fan base is. If Heupel goes into Norman and wins against Oklahoma in their first SEC game, and what if Oklahoma has like 7-5 year as an opener in the SEC player? They're like, oh, we may have made a mistake here. Like, is it one of those kind of deals?
The last thing I'll say about Heupel, would you agree that this is kind of a crossroads year? That I think there could be some heat next year, depending on what they do. Like, if they go 8-4,
no, I think next year is a crossroads year.
Okay, so we want to see the Vol fans want to see a 12-team playoff appearance in the next 2 seasons, or else
if they don't make the CFP in the next 2, then that's a crossroads, and that's probably a problem.
All right, moving on. This next tier. So this is, where am I on my list? Is this number 8? I have it sorted by tiers. What can we realistically expect tier? And this man by himself is Shane Beamer. 20-18, been to 2 bowl games in 3 years. It felt like he overachieved the first 2 years he was there. 1 losing season. Yeah, that's not great, but South Carolina is in such a, I don't know, difficult position here, sandwiched in between Georgia and Tennessee and Clemson and all these other just kind of budding powerhouses. I just don't really like going to bowl games pretty regularly. Like, what can South Carolina realistically expect?
Well, I think that's one of those things where I talked about it at the top of the show here, is Beamer is my number 1 for this reason. And I also think in this modern media climate where there's just so much attention, there's so many tweets, there's so many podcasts, so many videos, so many articles, that I can just see if South Carolina struggles, because their schedule is set up where they're going to take some L's early in this season. Like, how does Beamer handle that kind of start? How does, like, when you look around the SEC, which coach is most likely to not handle the harsh, negative media attention that is coming his program's way? And I feel like South Carolina is the number 1 pick for me in terms of most likely to combust, where you can just see the anger, the tension building up, the frustration. Like, if Lenora Sellers is a huge downgrade from Spencer Rattler, like if the offense continues to struggle, because there was already some folks who didn't like the OC last year, that hire, he's back. Like, I don't know. I can just see there's just not, I don't have to squint that hard to see the South Carolina Shane Beamer experience really coming to a head and having a lot of weekly problems in the press conferences after the Kentucky loss or the Florida loss or whatever, that just, you look at it and you're like, oh, this is not going well. I don't know how you run this back for 1 more year. You know what I mean? Like, I could just see this getting really uncomfortable really quickly in Columbia, because I think they're going to lose a lot of football games this fall.
Yeah, I think it'll be a personality thing. If if they fire him. But I mean, to this point, wins and losses wise, like I don't even really think he should be on the hot seat. Like I don't know what he's really supposed to do at South Carolina, win 7-8 games. Like, yeah, he's doing it. Like they've signed.
Just hire Dan Mullen though. If you're South Carolina, what are you doing? Dan Mullen, just hire Dan Mullen. Don't worry about the big time.
Dan Mullen to get a less.
He raises the floor. He could do what you saw at Mississippi State. Just let him do that in Columbia for 8 years. What are you doing? Just he's in the area. Just hire Dan Mullen. What do you mean? That's a home run.
He really doesn't want to recruit anymore. South Carolina, Beamer signed.
You don't have to in South Carolina. What you don't have like
top 25 classes.
Who cares? Just live in the portal. Live in the portal. Let Dan Mullen cook. There's no national title expectations in South Carolina.
With Dan Mullen is this guy doesn't even want to coach college football right now.
He's the top 3 offensive mind in the sport. Like, yes, I want Dan Mullen back. Dan Mullen's a great coach.
He was a terrible recruiter. He was not good at managing.
Who cares? He got Mississippi State to #1 in the nation. What are we doing?
He's just coasting off that one achievement, being ranked #1, like in start of November one time.
Give me Dan Mullen any day of the week, man. Dan Mullen's a great coach. And South Carolina would be lucky to have Dan Mullen. That's a huge upgrade. Do you not think Dan Mullen's a much better coach than Shane Beamer?
Was it Joker Phillips that got Kentucky up to #2 that one time? He wasn't just coasting off that for another decade.
Oh, hold on. I'm going to pull up Dan Mullen's record here. Like, Dan Mullen, you're just being like, Dan Mullen is a fantastic football coach. He's 103-61 total as a head football coach. He went 10-3, 9-4, 8-4, 8-5, 9-4 at Mississippi State.
I don't know why
he had 2 double-digit win seasons at Florida, 1-8-4, and then like the 5-6 where things fell apart. But like that previous year, he was #1 in the East. Like, what are we doing? Dan Mullen is a great football coach. Florida has been worse without Dan Mullen. Mississippi State has been worse without Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen is a great college football coach. He is better than anybody that South Carolina can bring in. Like, what are we doing? That's a great home run hire. He
doesn't want to coach right now. I don't know why we're even talking about Dan Mullen.
I'm just saying that if you were to, if he seems like he's in that area, like if he wants to stay in the SEC, low pressure job, South Carolina might be the perfect spot for Dan Mullen.
If they can get him, that's probably an upgrade from Shane Beamer, but I don't know. I just think Shane Beamer, like at South Carolina right now, like I'm not really sure what his expectations really are. Like,
I think bowl game is the expectation.
Recruiting presence, be a top 20 recruiting type team, and go to bowl games, win 7-8 games sometimes. Like, if he's doing that, like that's as best as South Carolina can really ask for. Like, it took a Hall of Famer, 2 Hall of Famers, Lou Holtz and Steve Spurrier, to have that program look like a winning program. Like, that's not what South Carolina has been in the entire history of their existence. If they got a guy that's getting to bowl games consistently, that's all they can really ask for in my book.
I don't know. I'm gonna ride with Dan Mullen here. I don't know how we got into Dan Mullen here, but
you just love Dan Mullen, so I don't know how.
I'm a big Dan Mullen guy.
A big Dan Mullen guy. My next tier, we got year 1 loaded with talent. Number 9 and 10 on my list, we got Mike Elko and Kalen DeBoer. So I don't think these guys are under too much pressure, obviously year 1, but I don't think these fans know how to not have their coach be under pressure. So A&M is just not going to be it's just going to be looked at as more of a quick fix. Like, they know how they've been recruiting. Obviously, they lost some to the portal when they fired Jimbo, but like, they got the funds, you know, they're going to get the players. So they're not going to have much patience, but I put them a slightly ahead of Kalen DeBoer in Alabama, just because replacing Nick Saban, I think just buys you a little bit more leeway. But Alabama fans, it won't take long for the pressure to increase. But I think this year 1, I put DeBoer down at 10.
It's interesting. I mean, I would say Elko he's pretty low on mine. He's 14th, I believe. Yeah, he's 14th on my list. Only 2 coaches below him for me in terms of hot or pressure coming into this year. I think the pressure with DeBoer is so fascinating because I have no idea what the temperature is for Alabama fans, right? Is it a revitalization because they got accustomed to just coasting with Nick Saban for so long that if they get hit in the mouth and they struggle early, that Bryant Denny actually becomes a top 3 home venue in the SEC? Do we see the students?
He needs us, guys. They gotta
yeah,
get
like do they wake back up? Do they come back into the fold and become like a really intimidating place to play? DeBoer's never lost. Like he's got one of the best resumes in the sport. I don't know. Like he's a coach who just came off a national title appearance, inheriting a better roster than he had at Washington that just made the national title. Like I have no idea what the most realistic expectation an Alabama fan should have for DeBoer. Like if I was an Alabama alum and fan right now, I don't know how I'd be feeling going into this year. I guess I would say with the talent, the schedule that they have and everything else, it's like anything below 9-3 is unacceptable, but I would also be like 9-3 is kind of a disappointment going into this year. So I think the pressure's sneaky high for DeBoer, where I don't think he's going to, like Elko is a gap year. Like a lot of coaches, when they get in that year 0, like Heupel walked into, and like Billy Napier at Florida, Shane Beamer, when he walked into, like a lot of coaches get the year 0 to get things in order, flip the roster, that sort of thing. I don't think Alabama is going to have that. Like, I don't think DeBoer is going to be able to just say, hey, we're going to experiment and let me figure this stuff out this year and figure out how to win in the SEC and how to win in Alabama. I think the expectation, because people think that Jalen Miller is a Heisman finalist. People think that this Alabama team should be good enough to win a national title this year. So I have no idea what the rational, most fair expectation is for DeBoer and what kind of pressure he should be under. But I think he's sneaky high in terms of how much pressure he actually is, because it's just, he's the guy who's following Nick Saban. And if he shows any signs of like, oh, this is not going to work, like this is not working in the SEC, and he loses in a bad way to Tennessee on the road, he loses to Georgia, he loses to Tech. Like, I don't know what the pressure cooker is going to look like in Tuscaloosa.
I think you convinced me that DeBoer might be ahead of Elko in this, because I think if A&M goes 8-4, Elko is like, okay, solid year 1. And if DeBoer goes 8-4, they're like, whoa, 4 losses. What the hell is a 4th loss? Like Alabama fans don't even know what that number is. So yeah, that will be a little bit different. So where'd you have Elko and where'd you have DeBoer on your list?
I had Elko 14, and I had DeBoer 12.
Okay. Oh, where'd you have Heupel, Freeze, Venables on your list?
I had Venables 8, Heupel 11, and Freeze 13.
Okay. All right. This next tier, we're going to call the better than ever tier. That things are good, and I'm not really sure, whatever. Keep doing what you're doing. So that's starting at 11, 12, 13. We got Eli Drinkowitz, Lane Kiffin, and Mark Stoops. So I put Drinkowitz first because with Missouri, it kind of feels like with their NIL laws and stuff they got going on, they're starting to get some of these big recruits out of high school. They're starting to feel like they have a window. Like, it's not like, obviously, this isn't like the best Missouri's ever been. I know they won a couple of SEC East and the Chase Daniel years. Gary Pinkel had some good years. But Drinkowitz is doing as good as you could possibly want him to do right now, right? If you're Missouri.
Yeah.
But I think they're looking at this as like, we might have a window right now that we need to capitalize on. Whereas I look at Lane Kiffin as like, Ole Miss, they're just like, Lane, people are talking about us. You just do what you do, man. And you want to recruit high school? No. You want to do portal? Yeah, do. Hey, whatever you think, man. They're just all in on Lane Kiffin. First ever back-to-back 10-win seasons, I want to say.
Yes.
In the history of the program. So I don't think Ole Miss, like, this kind of feels like this 2024 team could be the best team they've ever had. Like, it feels like a window for sure. Like, they could be competing for a national title this year, but it doesn't feel like if they make the playoff, there's any repercussions. Like, who knows? We went 7-5, or we went 8-4, down year. You'll get him next time, Lane. Like, I don't know. It feels like Ole Miss fans are just 100% behind Kiffin.
I love that you group these two together, because we should call these the obviously never winning a national title tier, because that's what's happening here. They're the obvious never winning a national title. And I think every fan, but here's the thing, and I don't mean this as a slight, it's just geography and history of the sport and Just it's not happening. Like Mizzou, Ole Miss, and Kentucky will not be winning a national title in our lifetime. I feel pretty safe not getting freezing cold taked on that one. Like
Hey,
I think I'm
man,
gonna be all right.
Mizzou and Ole Miss, 2 teams that just finished top 10 like a year ago,
Great,
top 12.
Matt. If you want to do that, you want to go down that road. Great, you're on your own, pal. Like this is I'm not joining you. Eli
Ever?
Drinkwitz.
Ever?
No, ever. No, because it's never happened and it will never happen. Like it's just not gonna happen, Matt Green. It's just not.
Hey,
Like this
sometimes things
no.
that never happen, man.
I mean
Sometimes
you
they
can do
happen.
it, but I just Eli Drinkwitz went 5-5, 6-7, 6-7, and then had the 11-2 year 4. The way that we're talking about Eli Drinkwitz in Mizzou right now as a program, just like, oh, rolling. Like
He
it's
stands on
insane to
business,
me.
Chase Thomas.
Like, what is this? Like, they're not a sleeping giant in this league. I think people have lost their minds. Like, Brady Cook is not the best quarterback in this conference. Like, Luther Burden is probably the best returning receiver. But, like, yeah, they've recruited pretty solid. But look at the classes. It's not like we're seeing some top 5 Mizzou classes stacked on top of each other. It's not like they're building this perennial juggernaut in the trenches and everything else that they're going to be able to run the gauntlet here. Like, we'll see. Mizzou's feisty. Like I think
This
Mizzou,
is a
they just
favorable
lost their
schedule this
DC
year.
to LSU. Can I see what Eli Drinkwitz looks like without his elite DC this year? Can I see if Mizzou can stack 2 great years on top of each other? Can we do that? Lane at least has earned the benefit of the doubt at 10-2 and 10-2. And like you said, Lane is just like living his best life because the expectations, like he could have got like, I understand from Lane's perspective, if he didn't go to, like, if he's just fine at Ole Miss for a while, because he's like, yeah, I could go to Auburn, I could go to Florida, but that's a huge risk. It's a lot of stress. I don't know if I can even win there. I understand the opportunity is better and higher, but man, I'm the transfer portal king here. Things are pretty cool. I'm still getting a lot of great players. Like you obviously won big in the portal here. Jackson Dart's awesome. Juice Wells in the building. Like you've Princely, the kid from Florida. So I mean, they're loaded up. Walter Nolan. Like they're gonna be really good, like you said this year. And it's just fun. Like the vibes are great there. And then Kentucky, Mark Stoops. You're never going to do better at Kentucky than Mark Stoops, and you just kind of have to just be like 8-4, 9-3. It's fine. Like Mark Stoops should never be on the hot seat at Kentucky.
8-4, 9-3. Those days are in the rear view.
I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying. But like, even that's like best case scenario. Is what I'm saying. Like, if you're a fan, you're like, man, we almost got to 10-2 one year. That was fun. You got like Mark Stoops has tapped out what Kentucky can actually be as a football program. So I think it's good that these 3 are in the same tier because I think the pressure should not be on any of those 3. But I will say, of those 3, the highest pressure should be Eli Drinkwitz, and it's not even close. Like Eli getting this just expectation that they have found themselves and that Mizzou is here to stay. I just don't get it. I don't. Let me see one more year. Let me get back-to-back seasons of Mizzou 10-win seasons.
Fairness to Kentucky fans, we know Stoops has had 10-win seasons, but I think without the Eastern Division, it's going to be different in the future. But yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I think Drinkowitz, I think it's just the expectations of the program. Missouri is just not as high as some of these other programs in the SEC. And so an 11-win season, top 10, like if it buys you 2 good years of goodwill at Tennessee, it might buy you 4 good years of goodwill at somewhere like Missouri. Where did you have those
disagree.
3 on your list?
I had let's see here. I had Eli Drinkwitz at 10. I had Lane Kiffin at 9, and I had Stoops at 7.
All right, and then these last 3 are all in a tier of their own.
Okay,
we got year 1, the other year 1 guy, Jeff Lebby, at 14 on the list. Mississippi State wasn't doing too hot last year, so I think the expectations are very low. They could be the worst team in the SEC this year. It's year 1.
But they never are. Mississippi State is like, how often do they finish last in the SEC? I mean, the West is like,
they may have finished last year, right?
In the West? I thought Arkansas did.
I'd have to look.
Hold on. I want to see this because Mississippi State, we always think that Mississippi State, is this the year they bottom out? No, they find their way into the middle. Mississippi State, I
that is fair. They always win more games than you kind of feel like they were going to.
Where is it?
Arkansas and Mississippi State.
Yeah, Arkansas finished last.
7 in the conference. Yeah. They both went 1-7 in conference though.
But who won that game? Who won the tiebreaker there? Let's see.
Had to have been Mississippi State because Arkansas beat Florida. That was their only conference win.
Okay, then there you go. See, that's what I'm saying. Mississippi State, they find a way to avoid dead last. I'm telling you, they just find a way. They won't finish last in the SEC this year. I will guarantee that.
Okay. That Arkansas was the 7-3 game last year. Good stuff. But yeah, so that's where Mississippi State is. Not much more to say. On the second to last tier, this tier is just called Vanderbilt, and whatever you want to say about Clark Lee, like 3 straight losing seasons, like, okay, like how many does he get at Vanderbilt? I don't know what the temperature is at Vanderbilt. Like Derek Mason got 3 years, 3 losing seasons and got fired. Like Bobby Johnson had 7 losing seasons in 8 years. So I don't
He was a Jefferson Pilot Sports legend, man. Bobby Johnson and Jefferson Pilot Sports was a tradition unlike any other, man. I miss those days.
Exactly. So I don't know. I don't know where the floor is at Vanderbilt. So
they've lost 10 straight. What's the number? Like, what's Clark Lee's number in terms of like, what's the like losses in a row before they're like, all right, this is too many.
I don't know. They could go 2-10 and be like, vibes are good. We like that he's the guy. We're building things long term. We're gonna keep him around.
Well, they get Alcorn State. That's a gimme. They're gonna have to get that one in September 7th. They play Virginia Tech in the opener. They're not gonna win that game, I don't think. At Georgia State's a coin flip, I think.
Is that right?
That's got to be a coin flip. I mean, you got Del McGee over there at State now. I don't know. I think I picked the Panthers at home against Vandy.
The Thurs be dangerous.
It is funny though. Like I've already spoken my piece about Vanderbilt, and it's not even like a Tennessee thing. I just think that they should be running the triple or the air raid. Like you just need to hire someone who just maximizes your limitations as the program. Like I just don't think the Notre Dame model is one that's going to be able to be replicated. I think Clark Lee's a good coach, and I think he can be a good DC in this conference. I think he could also be a good head coach in the Big Ten somewhere. I just don't think Vanderbilt in this style is going to work. I think they need to accept the triple or the air raid, and that's that.
Yeah, I hear you there. So where do you have Clark Lee on your list?
Kirby's last. Like Kirby's got no pressure. He's 16. Oh, Clark Lee, I have 6. And the reason I put Clark Lee 6 is like he should have a bunch of pressure. He should. The team's terrible. What I'm saying is like under the most pressure. Who should be under the most pressure? Like he's a top 6 coach who should be under pressure. This is not working.
What should he be under pressure to do? To win like 4 games?
At least. Show something.
You would fire Clark Lee if he didn't win 4 games?
I'd fire Clark Lee now because this is not as sustainable. Like, what are we doing? This is not how to build at Vanderbilt. This is not how to win football games in the SEC.
How do you build at Vanderbilt?
I've already told you, I'm hiring Kennesaw State's Bohannon as the head coach. We're running the triple, or I'm stealing Jamie Chadwell from Liberty and we're running that fun offense. I don't know. We're doing something. We're bringing in some kind of gimmick to Vanderbilt football, and we're going to gimmick our way to bowl games year over year. That's what we're doing.
I can't say the guy's under pressure because like he could have 3 more losing seasons for all I know. And
I don't think that's going to
happen. Does anyone care at Vanderbilt? Like I don't know. If they're winning 3 games consistently, like 4 games, like what's the?
They need to bring back the star and the V anyway. Like they shouldn't be winning any football games with the new logos and everything. They changed what wasn't broken. Bring back those vintage Jefferson Pilot Vandy uniforms.
You don't like that V logo?
I don't like it.
No, it doesn't do much for me. So far he's gone 2-10, 5-7, and 2-10. We'll see. I think 3 games. Next year, I think he's fine. I don't think he gets fired.
I think he's out no matter what after this year. I think Clark Lee doesn't make it into...
No matter what. So if they make a bowl game, he's still getting fired.
Okay, Matt Green, what are we talking about here? Okay. Obviously, if he makes a bowl game, then yeah, Clark Lee is going to stay at Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
He's not making a bowl game. That's not happening. No,
I don't see that happening. And then
like you could be the Diego Pavia fan, and you're still like, I don't know. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Their 2 leading receivers transferred out. Will Shepard and London Humphreys are gone, Matt Green.
Hey, I'm That's why I don't think he should be under pressure. I think it is what it is. Vanderbilt's going to be the worst team in the SEC, regardless of who the coach is. So
yeah, there's just no way around it. I think they have to be the worst team. I don't see a way that they escape that.
And if someone else is worse, then that coach gets fired. And they did win one game in the conference last year, right? They beat Florida a year ago, right? Or was it 2 years ago? They didn't beat Florida back-to-back years, did they?
No, did they beat South Carolina this past year?
Last year?
Hold on, did they not beat South Carolina?
No, they went 0-8 in the conference. They beat Florida and they beat Kentucky in 2023 in 2022. Went 5-7. 5-7, flirting with a bowl game. If they just could have beaten Tennessee, came so close to beating Tennessee that year. 56-0. Almost had them. They're 56 points away, 57 points away.
That game irritated me so much because people were picking Vandy to win in the upset, and that one because they were like, Tennessee's just not going to get up off the mat after what happened in South Carolina, and I was like, this is just ridiculous. That was one of the most insulting weeks of punditry from the college football world in terms of the Tennessee Volunteers, is picking Vanderbilt to beat Tennessee the week after the South Carolina game. That was unbelievable.
That's funny. I do remember that. And then the final tier, Kirby Smart, just Kirby. That's the tier. Under really no pressure. 2 national championships. King of college football right now. So do you also have Kirby at 16? I think a clear under the least amount of
Kirby's
pressure.
Just in it. There's no pressure.
How many years does Georgia have to go without a national championship for Kirby to be under pressure again?
5.
I think so. So we could be checking back with that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 2028. If we're still sitting on 2 national titles for Kirby Smart, there could be the seat could start to get a little hot.
Yeah, and you get to that point where it's like, is Kirby losing the fastball? Is it time for him to?
I don't know.
Retire?
I guess it depends. If you're losing in Final Fours and championships and just not winning at all, probably not. But I don't know that there's anything Kirby could do to get fired at this point. I think it's like
not fired, but I do think fans would start to get restless. I mean, Bama fans were getting restless. They haven't won a title since 2020.
Yeah, I mean, but were they really getting restless, or like did any Bama fans want Nick Saban to retire? Like, was there really like talk? Like, I mean, I'm not on their message board, so I'm sure someone out there is saying it. But like, was there serious talk of like, we need Saban to go ahead and retire. He's lost it. We need to get the next guy in.
I mean, 2 titles in 10 years for Saban. Like, it wasn't like he was just lighting it up. And we had the stat where the Golding years versus the Jeremy Pruitt and Kirby Smart years. So I mean, I think Alabama fans were getting, I shouldn't say restless, because I mean you're not getting anything better than Saban, but in terms of like, were they getting frustrated? I think they were definitely getting frustrated the last few years.
It's also a little different. What they won in the last 6 years with Saban. They also had 5. Did they have 5 other national titles before that? So yeah, I think they were fine. Kirby only has 2 to this point. So if he gets to 5, then there will be no pressure. But yeah, a few more years. Like, I mean, I like Urban Meyer. It feels like Urban Meyer got the 1 in 14 with Ohio State, and then it's like there was never really any more pressure on Urban Meyer. It kind of felt like, and they low-key underachieved for how loaded they were.
I don't know. Those late Adazio years, there was pressure on Urban. When Urban lost Mullen in those couple of years, I mean,
no, I'm talking about Ohio State Urban.
Oh, Ohio State Urban?
They won the 2014 title, and it's like that 2015 team had everyone run it back.
But I don't think they're in the same. I mean, what has Ohio State won? 1 title in our lifetime? No, 2. 2 in our lifetime.
No, yeah, the 2002 one with Tressel.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, so, I mean, like, Ohio State has been consistently top, like, 5, like, the last 20 years, maybe go back 30 years. Like, they're just right there every year. Like, even Urban Meyer, the 1 title seemed to buy him a lot of time at Ohio State. Like, they kind of consistently would not show up and lose to somebody one game a year. That's one thing. If I give Ryan Day anything, since Ryan Day took over, Ohio State has not had any of those signature Urban Meyer games, the Purdue type games where they just don't show up. Like, that really hasn't, I don't think that's happened one time under Ryan Day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know how we got off on that, but yeah, Kirby at the bottom of the list.
Well, because there's not really anything to say. That was, of course, we had to spiral out of there because there wasn't really anything to say about the Kirby stuff. So we we spiraled into something else, man. It's okay.
For sure. And I think that's another one of those things, like, maybe he's another beneficiary of this 12-team playoff. Like we talked about with Nick Saban, like some of those BCS years, the kick six, like some of those early years, the format is what kept Alabama out of it. Like they went undefeated and then lost to the Florida in the SEC championship with Tebow. Like if there's a different format, like Alabama might could have won even more championships than they had. So the down years, you could see Georgia get in as a lower seed, and then their good years, maybe they're the number one team in the country. So I think as long as they're making playoffs, finishing Final Fours and everything, I think there won't be a pressure for a while for Kirby. But definitely want to see that national championship total increase.
Well, there you go, Matt Green. That was fun. That was a fun exercise.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man.
Well, for that guy down there in Tequila, Georgia, for myself up here in Knoxville, Tennessee, that is all Matt and myself have on this edition of the program. Check back in next week, and we'll have more college football content and stuff as we're really close. We're 54 days when you're hearing this tomorrow away from the college football season. It will be here before you know it. Fall camp right around the corner. It's not feeling like football season yet because it's a billion degrees, but we'll get there. We're almost there. Matt Green, always a pleasure. Talk to you very soon.
Yes, sir.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.